Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over another edition of the top 10 best decks of the week. We've seen some slight movement in the metagame due to online events, so there are at least 2 new decks that weren't here last week. So if that sounds exciting to you, give this video a like, share, subscribe, and of course let us know in the comments which deck you are the most hyped for, which deck you're currently playing, and any comment really boosts the YouTube algorithm, so we appreciate all of the love and the support on the channel. How these videos works are I'm going to be kind of ranking these decks based off of recent tournament placements and my opinion as a player who's a professional Pokemon TCG player. All the decks are going to be available in the pinned comment below. I'll make sure to post that when this video is launched. So that's going to be there. Copy and paste those right into PTCG Live. If you need any of those cards in real life, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards. Or if you need any of those cards online, check out ptcgostore.com, plug in code TSS5 to save 5% off your order of codes to craft whatever you need on PTCG Live. There's a lot of grounds to cover here today, so let's jump into our number 10 pick. Kicking off our list this week is going to be Turbo Roaring Moon EX, a deck that's been off and on in the top 10 for the past few kind of formats. And I think it's one of those like just turbo aggressive decks that has an opportunity. This deck actually kicked Miraidon EX out of our top 10 this week. So having a turbo aggressive deck that's dark type for a turbo aggressive deck that's lightning type probably matters. And it's probably like this one does play Miraidon. A handful of other decks are playing Miraidon right now. So this might be slightly better positioned as we look at the overall metagame. Being able to load up energies with Dark Patch, Professor Zeta's Vitality, and using Frenzied Gouging to knock out anything, or using Calamity Storm to knock out some littler 2 prize card basic Pokemon EX, on top of having this kind of ancient Pokemon suite of techs. So you can attack with the Baby Roaring Moon, the Koraidon. We have access to free retreat with Latias. Petrun can get us out of some Snorlax controls. I think it's one of those things where this deck is just well built and it's well positioned in our current metagame enough to make the top 10 this week. I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where decks are going to move in and out. Our top 10 is not ever going to be super solidified. I think a lot of it is, but this is really one of those things where it's an appropriate change. It wouldn't surprise me if Ancient Box took this spot, maybe even Gouging Fire took this spot. All these decks are very similar, and I think they all have their own strengths in certain metagames. But we'll have to see how the rest of the list turns out. Let's jump into number 9. At number 9, we have Goldango EX, being able to use coin bonus, drawing extra cards, and really making use of that Energy Surge Pro A-Spec to kind of pitch all those different colored energies with Make It Rain. Goldango was kind of started off the format hot as being one of the top 5 decks, and it's kind of fallen into a bottom lower half of the top 10 as the format's progressed. I don't think it necessarily has the best matchup spread. It doesn't necessarily have a bad one either. So it's one of those things where this deck is just good. And I think a lot of the cases for the decks in even the top 20 or so are good. I'll be straight up, like I didn't include Ancient Box this week. Ancient Box is the deck that I brought to Toronto Regionals. I made around 50th place out of over 2,000 players. Decks like Goldango were within the top 64. These decks can win you boxes, championship points. You're so close to making top 8. They might even make top 8, right? So there's nothing wrong with these decks. They're just not as winning as the other decks. So maybe that's due to players just not playing them enough. Maybe just some inherent fallbacks. Maybe some rougher matchups than other decks. Not every deck is built equally. So I think this is a great build of the deck. I like this version with the Togekiss more than I like the Palkia V-Star engine, especially when it comes to the Energy Surge Pro. And overall, I mean, I think it's just like the same. A lot of these decks are going to be the same, especially over the holidays since we haven't had any major tournaments. So we'll probably see some list changes and more of a meta shift after Birmingham Regionals in early January. Let's see what we got going on at number 8. Another returning addition to our top 10 best decks is going to be Archaludon EX at number 8. Largely riding off the coattails of its success at the Champions League in Osaka, even though that tournament was in Prismatic Evolutions formats before we even have it here elsewhere in the worlds. It seems to, I mean, there wasn't any new Prismatic cards that got added into this deck, so I think a lot of players are like, I could kind of play this and try it at home, and it's doing enough success where it can kind of hang with the metagame. I think this deck has arguably been one of the top 20 decks for a hot minute now, and now that it's kind of getting its dues, its flowers, while it can still smell them, I'm all for it. I've been a huge fan of Duraludon ever since I top 4 Vancouver Regionals with Duraludon VMAX. Now that my boy can evolve, I'm all excited about this big bridge Pokemon that can accelerate energies with Assemble Alloy and do 220, and then you could Professor Turo, Palpad that back, Thornton into it. There's a lot of cool things that you got going on. And Dialga has always been kind of him, being able to use that Star Chronos V-Star to take that extra turn. A lot of really cool things that you could do when it comes down to playing this deck. I think it's a really solid build. The Champions League Osaka list has just been fantastic. I think this is a card or two off. But Archaludon EX could probably hang in this meta. Might not always be top 10, but we'll have to see what future weeks bring. Do you think Archaludon's going to hang with the metagame? Let me know in the comments below. At number 7, we have the ragingest of Pokemon, Raging Bolt EX, being able to use Bellowing Thunder, ripping those energies from itself, that you got those energies with Professor Sada, and of course, Teal Mask Ogerpon, being able to Teal Dance extra energies in play. This is the definition of a turbo-aggressive deck, like Turbo Roaring Moon, so it's no surprise to see it in the bottom lower half, mid-lower half of the top 10. I think this deck's definitely on its way up, because Regidrago did just win Toronto Regionals a couple weeks ago, and this build is just meant to be kind of a super standard, super easygoing build, cutting back a little bit on Bravery Charms, but still enough to kind of throw some sticks in the way of the Regidrago. They still got that Alolan Executor Swinging Sphene, so that's why we can go cut down a little bit on our Bravery Charms, but otherwise I think this list is pretty standard as they come. So if you're a huge fan of Raging Bolt, I think now's a pretty good time to try to beat up some of those Regidragos that end up always in top cut. I mean, Toronto was 6 out of the top 8, so play towards your strengths. Does Raging Bolt EX have a perfect metagame spread? No chance. But does it do pretty good into Regidrago most of the time? Yeah, as long as you don't skip a beat, you got a pretty good chance of having a good matchup there. And if that's what it takes to be one of the better turbo-aggressive decks in the format, we take those. So all the power to Raging Bolt EX. I wouldn't be surprised if this one rose up all the way to the top 5 spot in the next couple weeks, but we'll have to see how that plays out once we start seeing some more major online tournaments. Let's see what we got going on at number 6. At number 6, we have the Crab. Cloth has been popping off a little bit. I'm happy to see Cloth here because it's kind of a weird deck, to be honest. Terrapago is using Area 0 to give yourself that huge bench, and you can load up with that Brute Bonnet, that Radiant Hisuian Sneasler, and poison your opponent's Pokemon, free retreat with Latias, searching out tools with Guru, and slap a DT on a Clop or a Terrapagos and rip your opponent with that Binding Mochi for a lot of damage. This deck seems to have answers to a lot of the kind of turbo-aggressive decks, can hold its own against Drago, can hold its own against Charizard EX. It's not a perfect deck, but it does have a lot of answers to the metagame, which is why I think this is kind of that hybrid turbo single prize card aggressive deck, technical special condition deck that really gives you an opportunity. So out of all those decks, I think that's why this one's placing a little bit higher than the Turbo Moon and the Raging Bolt. There's a little bit more something behind the scenes, giving yourself that opportunity to maybe outplay your opponent. Maybe your opponent hasn't played against this Cloth build or hasn't played against it in a couple weeks. Again, not perfect. I think there's a lot of decks out here that are just like, they have flaws when it comes to matchups. They have flaws if their opponent goes after a 2 prize card Pokemon early. But I'm a huge fan of the Cloth. I was this close to playing at the Toronto Regionals before I just told myself that I had to play Ancient Box. That's how it goes. But we're going to be going to the halfway point of the list. These decks are getting pretty up there. Let's see what we've got going on next. And this is a great time to take a bit of a break and let everyone know that TSS is proudly sponsored by Advanced GG. When I'm making these videos, I am trying my Advanced GG supplements. So it's kind of a energy drink powder or a focus powder. I find that it does kind of give me that next little oomph that I need in my day to kind of get through. Similar to like what an energy drink is, but I don't feel like I crash out. So right now I'm drinking the Blackout flavor, which I think is kind of like a grape flavor focus. And I have this cool, like kind of candy colored shaker. Kind of become part of my day to day when it comes down to it. So check out our description for the advanced.gg, and you can use code TSSWIN to save 10% at their website. So check it out if you think it's a product that's right for you. Otherwise, I mean, feel free to continue to watch the video. Let's jump into that top 5. At number 5, we have Dragapult EX with Iron Thorns EX. Now, I feel like this build is incredibly strong. I love having the Toad Screw with Slime Mold Colony. And the deck kind of works where you got Iron Thorns in the front. You're able to slow down your opponent if you're able to slow down your opponent with your initialization ability. And you have access to Dragapult if Iron Thorns is just not really going to be working out too much. Using Crispin to load up some energies on your Pokemon, and being like a really just like chill, kind of half control, half spread deck. And I think this kind of takes Thorns to another level where it's not just so mono-focused, and it does take Dragapult EX to a different level where it's not just so spread focused. So I think it's some good coverage when it comes down to it. That's really going to be the big strategy. Probably why it's number 5. It ends up falling middle of the road. Sometimes it's not 100% perfect. Sometimes I think if you don't run into the right matchups, or if you start with a Dreepy instead of an Iron Thorns, you could struggle a little bit, but there's a reason why it's at number 5, and I think it's quite successful when it comes down to it. So we're probably going to see this deck a little bit more in the future goes, and I mean, Dragapult EX decks are all the rage when it comes to Prismatic Evolutions, so I'm sure we're going to see a bunch of those as that set kind of goes on because of Budu and slowing down your opponent by the item lock. Now, I think the next 4 decks are really, I think I put it down to 4 decks before I used to put it to 3 decks, are really a cut above the rest. So even though they're all within the top 10, and of course, every deck's going to be a slightly better as we get towards the top, or slightly better position metagame-wise as we get to the top, I think the top 4 really knock it out of the park. And these are like the 4 decks that I think kind of control the format a lot more than most people think that they do. Let's jump into our number 4 pick. At number 4, we have Lugia V-Star. Now, Lugia V-Star started off the season absolutely popping off, and I think it's fallen back a little bit because we saw some counters with the Miraidons, the Iron Thorns, even Dragapult Iron Thorns to some degree. I think as those decks kind of like clear out of the format, I'm sure you still have to worry about Dragapult Iron Thorns. As long as there's not really too much lightning support in the formats, I think Lugia V-Star takes its wings and flies high. And I think the metagame looking towards San Antonio, and even right before this deck rotates out of our 2024-2025 standard rotation in March, April-ish, I really feel like Lugia V-Star gets better with Prismatic Evolutions. It gets the Regigigas, but right now we're looking at Surging Sparks, and I think it's so well positioned for San Antonio, where it just has a strong matchup against a lot of the decks within the current top 4, the top 10. It can hold its own against Regidrago quite strong. And I mean, we're just going to be pitching Archeops, loading them up. Nothing special. I think this is Kieran Farrah's exact list from Toronto. And I just think the deck's excellent right now. Sure, people can say that there's sometimes inconsistency issues. I think people just play this deck wrong a lot, to be honest. Like, I know I can be one who could blame a deck a lot, but I just think that Lugia V-Star is one of those decks that if you give it the opportunity to see success, it can see success. And I think now's the time to really give it a try. So it's coming up strong. Deck number 4. Let's see what we've got going on in our top 3. At number 3, we have Charizard EX. And I think that a lot of these decks, I have not really changed the list. They're pretty solidified in our format. There's not really too much that's changing in our format right now to see these lists change on a regular basis. Charizard EX is still going to be Infernal Rain, loading up those energies, Burning Darkness, scaling as your game progresses, Pidgeot searches out anything, and Dusknoir allows you to control damage, extra damage, prize cards. You got Defiance Bant, do extra damage. You have Briar to draw extra prize cards. This deck has a lot of really cool pieces, so it's kind of a hybrid aggressive deck, but there's a lot of like skill when it comes to playing these cards in the right order and just really choosing how you're approaching your opponent's board. Charizard EX, to me, when it comes down to it, has been one of the just default best decks in format, and right now with it seeing so much success, I think it's totally worthwhile to give it a try. The League Battle deck just came out in late November, early December, so if you're looking for a deck to kind of pick up for 2025, I'd go to your local game store or to Kayfabe Cards or even ptcgostore.com, get the cards, the codes to build a Charizard deck. You could probably put together for under $100 without the League Battle deck. Probably put this deck together for $50 with the League Battle deck. And that's not a lot to be playing a card game in 2025 compared to a lot of other card games. So that's what we got going on at number 3. What do we got going on at number 2? We're going to find out next. At number 2, we have Gardevoir EX, and we're still just going to be vibing with the list that Henry Chow, our Baltimore regional champion, played to Toronto regionals to make top 16. Gardevoir is going to be all about that Psychic Embrace, loading up those energies, getting them to discard pile with Curly and other means, and accelerating the Pokemon like Screamtail, Drifloon, whatever. As we build up damage counters to our Pokemon, we can use Monkey Dory with the Dark Energy to move those off from our Pokemon, maybe to make room for more energies, or to manipulate the damage counters to put onto our opponent's Pokemon so that we're able to kind of do extra damage when it comes down to it. There's some cool techs in here, such as Klefki, Mawile. We can see that sometimes we can add a Flutter Mane to this deck. And I think that this build is just, you can pretty much go no wrong when it comes to Unfair Stamp, maybe Precious Trolley, maybe Secret Box. There's a lot of different ways you could play Gardevoir and a lot of resources there. So again, check out the list in the pinned comment, copy and paste it right into live. And otherwise, I think that this is just a very solid build, has a strong matchup spread. Has a really weird Drago matchup. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad, but we'll have to see how that continues to play out. We have only one deck at number 1. If you haven't put your guesses in the comments below, let us know your guesses. It's Friday. Time to find out what the best deck of the week is. And it is... Our deck of the week is going to be Regidrago V-Star. Regidrago V-Star just winning Toronto Regionals and seeing absolute success online, at League Cups, everywhere. It's hard not to see this deck as GOAT status in this current format. It's just the BDIF. Being able to use Apex Dragon, copying Dragon Pokemon out from your discard pile, having a variety of different attacks that you only need Grass or Fire to use because that's how Apex Dragon works. Accelerating those energies with Teal Mask Ogerpon, moving them over with Energy Switch. This deck really has it all, has the room for consistent engine, and it's just literally a well-defined deck that ever since the World Championships has just got better and better and better and better. We understand how the core looks. So this is why the deck is pretty much the same, pretty much every single week. And the new addition from Surging Sparks, the Alolan Executor EX with Swinging Fiend, allows you to knock out Pokemon like Raging Bolt EX, even when they have Bravery Charm, off of a coin flip. And if your opponent has a 2 prize card Pokemon on the active, 2 prize card Pokemon on the bench, you're just flipping a coin to see which 2 prize cards you're going to take. A lot of the time, you're just going to keep up with that 2-2-2 prize card mentality. I think Regidrago V-Star is going to stay on top of the metagame until we see Prismatic Evolutions, and at least in Japan, it's kind of fallen off the board from there. So we're only a few short weeks away from the potential huge metagame shakeup, but of course, as always, we'll cover it here and more. I have a few closing comments, so let me close things out. As much as we've seen Archaludon and Roaring Moon enter into the top 10 this week, we might see those decks quickly exit. I believe that Archaludon's on this list largely due to its results at the Champions League Osaka. I was surprised to see Ancient Box not on the results this week. I mean, I know I'm the one that I have a bit of a bias towards that deck, but it wasn't remotely close to being within the top 10 of tournament rankings, so that's why it wasn't included. And Turbo Roaring Moon's been doing quite well at League Cups and some online tournaments lately, more so than Snorlax that it replaced those with, and more than Miraidon that replaced those basically 2 decks. I think everything else might have shifted a spot or 2, but we're still Regidrago on top for the foreseeable future. I don't think anything's going to really change that, at least until we see the results of Prismatic Evolutions. I hope that everyone's enjoyed watching this video. Again, if you haven't given this video a like and subscribed to the channel yet, what are you doing? Double check to see if you subscribed. I bet some of y'all think you are subscribed. I do this all the time on TikTok. I do this all the time on YouTube. Watch channels. I'm like, I should probably support my creators. Doesn't cost anything, and really does help support us getting to our next goals and other potential sponsorships that might be when we get to something like 25k subs, because 25k subs sounds a lot better than 24,900, right? So we're trying to get to those milestone goals. If you're trying to support me as a creator personally, you can check out my Metafy page. I have access to my group there that has all the top 10 decks and more. A lot of the times I get these videos done early. A lot of the times I'm working on other content, including Prismatic Evolutions, including the Battle Partner set. So you can always check out and get early access to deck lists there and support me, or pick up a one-on-one coaching session with me to start your 2025 off with a bang, get those results where you want to be. If not, you get to hang out with me for an hour or 2 and really just get to learn some more about Pokemon. I'll be continuously creating content while I prepare for San Antonio Regionals, so I hope to see many of y'all watching the videos, and of course, I'd love to meet up with a bunch of people in San Antonio, Texas, so if you see me there, be sure to say hi. That being said, I'll catch up with everyone later. Peace out, and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.